Welcome to another edition of We Need to Talk About Movies, brought to you by banterflix.com. And now, here's your host, Jim McLean.
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, you filthy animals, or should I say, hee-haw. Welcome to the latest episode of We Need to Talk About Movies. I'm your host, Jim McLean, the editor-in-chief of the Banterflix Movie Review website. This is another one of our festive episodes, and on this recording, I'm going to be joined by Neil Sedgewick from Films and Faith and local cosplayer Joanne Alexander as we have a chat about that beloved Christmas classic, Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. On this episode, we're going to have a conversation about the film between a Christian, an agnostic, and a Satanist. And it's a lot of fun, as you'd expect. So before we get into that, let's play a clip of the film.
Mary, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and the next day and next year and the year after that. I'm shaking the dust of this crummy little town off my feet, and I'm going to see the world. Italy, Greece, the Parthenon, the Colosseum. Then I'm coming back here and go to college and see what they know. And then I'm going to build things. I'm going to build airfields. I'm going to build skyscrapers 100 stories high. I'm going to build bridges a mile long. Were you going to throw a rock? Hey, that's pretty good. What'd you wish, Mary?
Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Can't you come out tonight? Buffalo gals, can't you come out tonight?
Dance by the light of the moon. What'd you wish when you threw that rock?
Oh, no.
Come on, tell me.
If I told you, it might not come true.
What is it you want, Mary? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Mary.
I'll take it.
So that's a clip of It's a Wonderful Life, and I think this is going to be a fun podcast. Joining me, as I said in my little introduction, is Neil Sedgewick from Films and Faith. Hello to you, Neil.
Hello, Harva.
Neil, we're kind of billing this in a weird way as a follow-up to a discussion we had live on stage. Remember when you could do those? And that was a packed, sold-out screening at the Strand when you and I had a chat about It's a Wonderful Life. And many years ago, roughly, can you remember how, was it maybe 2 or 3 years ago?
3, I think 3 now.
3. And we had that now, I think I'm mellowing, Neil, because we build that as an atheist and a Christian share their love of It's a Wonderful Life. So now I'm billing myself in this podcast anyway, and I think generally in life, an agnostic. As I said just before we started to record, I think it's just my get out of jail card. It's just a kind of like deep down, I'm like, well, you just didn't need, if you'd sent me a burning bush or, if 3 wise men had arrived at my door or something, I would have been, all right then, I believe. But that is not me attempting to be sacrilegious in any way, although clearly I'm being sacrilegious in every possible way. Just to say, Neil, I've mellowed over the years. But we thought we'd make this a bit of a fatal 3-way, right? We have, in the whatever other corner, we have a Satanist. And regular listeners will know what we're in for. Neil has never done a podcast with Joanne Alexander. So I think, Neil, I don't even think any kind of amount of hand sanitizer will help you feel clean after this. I don't know what Joanne's got lined up for us. She's lovely, really. She's lovely, really. But we have a Satanist in our ranks here at Banterflix, and that, of course, is Joanne Alexander. So, Joanne, we normally introduce you as the cosplayer. I think the first time we've ever introduced you as the Satanist. But hello, Joanne Alexander.
Ave Satanist, Jim. And me.
So, do you want to tell our listeners, because when they hear the term Satan, Satanist, and particularly when we're kind of discussing and around kind of using terms like Christian, agnostic, atheist, for our listeners who might not know, tell them what exactly does that mean to be a Satanist, for you anyway?
I suppose, well, I'm also an atheist. I do not believe in God. I do not believe in supernatural. And really, Satanism is almost like, well, it is a religion without the supernatural aspects. Why should Christianity and any other religion have the supernatural aspects? We're into critical thinking and following science and treating the body as it's yours. It's not up for anyone else to make a decision on your body, particularly as a female, and with regards to how we as women look after ourselves. And our bodies are our own, and it isn't anybody else's business how our procreative rights should be looked at by anyone else. And it's certainly not up to a government or an organization to demand us to have children or not allow us to have abortions. It's something I actually feel quite strongly about. I was a Christian many years ago, but soon found, well, not soon, it was actually for quite a long time, but realized that it was illogical to think that way, that it's supernatural. It's believing in magic. Prayers aren't prayers. They're actually, you're saying a spell. There's no difference to me, Christianity from Harry Potter or any other religion. The other thing about Satanism as well is we don't believe in the devil. We are not the Anton LaVey version of Satanism. We are the critical thinking, logical thinkers of the Satanic Temple and the Global Order, Satan type Satanists. So we leave it to the Christians to believe in Satan, because we don't.
Okay. I know we want to get in to talking about It's a Wonderful Life. I get a sense, Joanne, you don't really want to talk about It's a Wonderful Life from listening to, or from reading your text, Joanne, the last couple of days. I don't think you really want to talk too much about It's a Wonderful Life. But again, this is something we've never really talked about. And over the last few pods, whether it's been just through these Zoom calls or after the recordings, we've kind of been talking about a lot of heavy and deep things. Just when you mentioned that, the fact that, can you remember, like you say you were a Christian, was there a moment for you? And I suppose a moment for you when you kind of, no other way of putting it, lost your faith. And then how long would you say you consider yourself to be a Satanist?
Well, it was a very sad story. I had an accident, and I would have considered myself a Christian back then. And over the years, I realized, how silly is it to believe in something that says he's looking after you and looking out for you, and you look around the world and you see everything that's happening, and this so-called free will bullshit, which is really a cop-out because it's not free will at all. How something so infallible can make something fallible. And I started to listen to podcasts, actually science-based podcasts, an awful lot of which are run by atheists. And it was The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which started to show me actually that this belief in the supernatural and even things that aren't science-based medicine, it's not the way really to live your life. You don't want to be believing in something that is outside the natural laws. If you do that, well, anything that doesn't fit in with the scientific method, you can't prove anything. If something is that ridiculous, it's up to the person to prove to you that it's actually real. And I could not see any proof. To me, there was no proof that this God, Allah, whoever it is that decided existed. And I will say it's the same thing for me for any pseudo-religion. Wiccan, witches, Muslim, I'm trying to think, Mormonism, which is completely bonkers. Like, you have to really look into Mormonism sometime. But the Bible is a book that's full of hate and contradiction. The promotion of slavery and misogyny towards women. You don't even want me to get me started in this, Jim, because I'm
just going to say, Joanne, the one thing you didn't mention there was Scientology. So clearly you're terrified of Tom Cruise. You didn't mention Scientology.
They'll come for us.
Yeah, well, you'll just get them. And Thomas shouted us louder than he shouted anybody on set on Mission Impossible 7. If you thought he was angry then, Joanne, will you see how angry he's going to be? Neil, just out of curiosity, have you ever come across or have you ever met a Satanist in your life so far?
Well, I never have, and I find it absolutely fascinating. And I would also say this to Joanne as we're just chatting, like I absolutely agree with everything you've just said. My own Christianity has moved significantly from being somebody who was a regular churchgoer to not now at all. I don't have a church to go to. I can remember sitting up in a balcony, like above it all one morning, and And whatever happened in that moment, it just disconnected me from everything. And I went, this language is really weird. Like if you walk in off the street into any kind of denominational church and you know nothing of kind of the language, the structures, like it's weird. And I also agree with Joanne about the contradictions and the complexities of the Bible, and that is something that flipped me. I struggle and wrestle with, and there's always this thing, particularly in Northern Ireland, I think sometimes there's a line that people trot out sometimes to go, well, speaking as a Christian, and I go, honestly, could you not? Because you're really doing me a lot of damage in that. Never mind the people you're coming for.
Yeah, a lot of these people actually haven't read the Bible. That they've cherry-picked the wee bits that they like, and they've listened to their pastors, ministers, whatever, priests, and they've given them the nicey bits.
Yeah.
And gone, all right, I don't really need to read that. You've given me sort of the abridged version of how I think I want to live my life. I mean, the amount of contradictions in the Bibles, anything more than, I mean, you've two contradictory statements. You know, you think about things like the Gospels of Jesus. One minute Jesus is born and they're going back to Bethlehem or Nazareth, wherever it is they're going. They're going somewhere local. And in another one, they're
good thing in this current climate anyway that they're staying local. You're being advised to stay local.
And don't invite, I mean, those three wise men, three households, really not a good idea at this moment in time either. And the shepherds, yeah, it's just foot and mouth potentially, you know. I mean, there's a lot of complications there, but I mean, the contradictory statements, who was right? I mean, allegedly, apparently Paul was the first one that came up with the books, and he's seen Jesus as a spiritual thing. He was like tripping balls coming off of his stuff, and he was
Joanne, I don't think that's the exact term he used back in the day.
Oh no, I think that's a theological term.
Oh, is it? Is that actually? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. I stand corrected, because I mean, I come at this, and I don't really know if we talked too much about this. I mean, I was raised, you know, as a Baptist. You know, my father wanted me to know my Bible inside out. My father, for most of my life, I've always known him as an atheist. And his always mantra was, I want you to be able to know the Bible inside out and just use it as a guide to be not so much a good Christian, but a good person in many ways. And I know Ricky Gervais talks about a lot about that. And there's things I would agree with. Joanne, we're not going to go down too much, but it's strange, you know, since my father had a stroke about 10 years ago, he's much more, I would say, not even so much agnostic, but I would say he's much more a man of faith. And it's strange, but that's just that. I mean, I've always said this in the past. I've always been envious of people that have faith. Not, and I don't mean that term in terms of blind faith or anything like that, but that faith and that strength that does give people. And I have seen that firsthand in terms of people that are dealing with some pretty tough, hard things, illness, and faith has been a very powerful thing in helping them get through. And I've always been slightly envious of that, in a sense, but that's not really what we're here for. You know, we're here to talk about It's a Wonderful Life, but there's a lot of things, particularly, Joanne, that you've mentioned, and I think we talked on this briefly, Neil, at our event at the Strand, because the concept of free will is such an important thing, or is an important discussion point within It's a Wonderful Life. That idea, does George Bailey, does he really have free will? Because in so many times he's attempting to leave his small little town and things conspire against him to keep him there for the betterment of society, the betterment of the community. And those are things I'm sure we're going to come up with and talk about. But generally, kind of before we get into that, so it's Frank Capra's 1946 classic. I love it. I went to see it in the cinema. I know there's a pandemic on at the minute, but I've always said every Christmas George Bailey has to be saved for me. And I chose to see it in the cinema again and thoroughly enjoyed it. Yes, listeners, I cried. I cry every time I watch it. I always do. It just puts a smile on my face. And there's reasons for that I'll come back to. Neil, I guess anyone who's listened to our previous conversation will know that you're also a fan of the film as well.
Yeah, I love it. I've kind of grown to love it more and more as the years roll on. And it's funny, I just put something up today about Christmas films in general. I have found this year Christmas films to be a particularly emotional thing. Not just It's a Wonderful Life, but there's something about because as a massive generalization, at some point in a Christmas film, a community will step in, like in It's a Wonderful Life, or there will be a coming together, like all those people outside Central Park in Elf, or there'll be a family reunited, Home Alone, or, you know, John McClane will get to his missus again, you know, Die Hard, because it is a Christmas film. And there's something, I have found it quite emotional at the end of Christmas films this year, that kind of coming together and that resolution, because I think we're all apart at the minute, obviously, and we're all sitting on Zoom doing this, and I feel like Christmas films are kind of just providing that little bit of hope that things will turn towards people being together again and doing stuff like that, you know. But it's a Wonderful Life. I have to watch it on my own because my wife won't. She does not like it at all. Ooh. She doesn't like that kind of 1940s kind of, hey, see, where, there, like that kind of chat. Yeah, we're going in the room and we're doing the thing. You know, she hates all that, and I can appreciate that, but I can also look past it and kind of go, but it's about this. It's about this this individual who this town has its absolute hooks in him. And you just, in some ways, I watched it this time round and I was like, oh, maybe he'll get away this time. It's ridiculous. The film you watch so many times and I keep thinking, maybe the train will go. Maybe it'll be okay this time. Maybe he'll get away and get to be happy within the first 15 minutes. Because like it's a dark ride until you get to that kind of more resolve stuff at the end. Like it is dark, it is tough. But yeah, I love it.
But I think you've got to go through that. Like I know I went to see it on Friday at the QFT. I've made 2 trips to the QFT just before Christmas, and you're talking, Neil, about Christmas movies getting you emotional. I went to see, and I've always loved it, but I love and adore A Muppet's Christmas Carol. Properly gets me in the feels every time. And I went to see it on Sunday morning at the QFT. There was a good crowd there. And I mean, I know that line. I mean, it's the line that's quoted from that film endlessly. Life is made up of meetings and partings. And I had a full, proper blub at the cinema during that. And I mean, I had a full, proper blub at It's a Wonderful Life. It's that ending and it's that quote in the book that just gets me every time in the fields, and it's just as a reminder, you know, I've always said this, and I know I'm going to let you come in, Joanne, and kind of try and trample over everything that Neil and I have said. I've talked about this in the past, that looking at it from a mental health point of view, I know It's a Wonderful Life. You've got to go through some tough things to get through that film, but and I know it's too simplistic to just say that, but for me, it's a tonic. It's a tonic for me that just reminds me that we are not alone. And though you may feel that at your lowest points, that there will still be, hopefully, a community around you that knows you, respects you, and is willing to work with you and help you when you need it at your darkest edge. That's my thought. I mean, that's one of the main reasons why I love It's a Wonderful Life. That reminder that even in our darkest hours, there is someone, there could be more than someone, a group of people, a town, anything that could potentially be there for you and will acknowledge the things that you've done for them. But that's just me. I'll not get too deep and meaningful at this stage. Joanne, what's your thoughts on the film?
I thought it was a very problematic film. Really problematic film.
Okay, in what sense?
Well, I thought we were watching the slow torture of a man, that he was forced to leave a life of total mediocrity after him wanting to go out into the world and do something fantastic and wonderful. And he wasn't allowed to because his future wife was evil and cast a spell whenever she threw a rock at the house and wished for him to stay. That was it. Everything went to absolute shit from him. It's bad enough that the man is supporting someone who was a murderer to start off with as a boy, because the chemist, he poisoned somebody accidentally, and George doesn't let on. So we've got that to start off with. Then later
No,
on,
well, this is the thing, Joanne. He doesn't poison someone. He doesn't poison someone because George intervenes, and you have to remember.
I kind of lost that wee bit. I thought he had actually poisoned somebody.
No. What basically happens in that film is the pharmacist is so hung up on the grief of the death of his son, I think, off the top of my head, that he isn't concentrating. He's drunk. He makes mistakes when he's making up the prescription, and George notices that he's put poison in and tells him not to. And that's why, as we see later on...
Oh, yeah.
There we go. Neil, hang on. If I could give you a virtual high five, boom. You know, we've just...
There we go. Well, I'd be I didn't pick that up. It's probably all the talking like this. Oh, I didn't do this.
Yeah.
I want $1 million. I want a hoo-ha. I want $1 million. Hee-haw.
All that hee-haw. Anyway, so yes, I picked that up wrong because that sort of shocked me initially. I thought, what the hell? But anyway, the man is systematically tortured throughout the film until the point where is his uncle or whoever it is that also works in that cooperative with him loses £8,000, and it goes to the bad guy, the penguin of the film. That's who you remember me on. Penguin. And Penguin keeps the money, and that's poor George is thinking, right, I'm gonna have to bump myself off to get the money back again. And what happens? They decide the angels, who by the way don't look anything like the angels in the Old Testament, who were fucking mental looking with many heads, bodies, animal things, because God was a hissy little bitch in the Old Testament and was very jealous all the time and was forever sending angels down to kill half the tribes and entire people and genocide. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent again.
Shock.
No, I know it's a shock.
On the Banterflix podcast, going off on a tangent. How very dare you, madam?
So, anyway, instead of sending George down, this angel, to maybe find the £8,000, they torture the man by pretending he was never born, just because George throws his throwaway mark, I wish I'd never been born. And what's his name says, oh, well, that might work. And Clarence says, that might work. And they pretend he's never been born. And the poor man is put through hell, absolute hell, because his wife doesn't recognize him. Oh, I'll get into the misogyny in a minute before I forget. His wife doesn't recognize him. The townspeople don't know him because they've never obviously seen him before because he'd never been there. The good work that he had done getting a house in the estate built, of course, that didn't happen either. And in the end, he pleads with God and Clarence to give him back his old life. It's a classic example of Stockholm. He's treated really badly, and whenever his jailers go away, he cries and cries to bring them back again. I find it really quite disturbing. And what happens whenever he asks to see Mary? Shock. Mary is a working woman, and of course, if she's a working woman, she can't possibly be married and she won't have children either, because obviously it was okay in whenever before we see George being woofed out of existence, she was allowed to do volunteer work. But what would tie that woman should actually have a living? Oh no. She's allowed to do volunteer work, but that's it. She's not allowed to have a job, and she must have loads of kids. That's it. That was total. That was women in that. They were homemakers. They stayed at home. They offered support to their men, and even whenever there was a person of color in it, they were obviously, it was a flipping slave relationship there. So yeah, now I'm obviously using 2020 morals on a film that's like 60 odd years old, 60, 80 years old, whatever. But I still found it really, as a female, very misogynistic. I couldn't see the good in it. Okay,
to kind of say this, I completely disagree with pretty much 90% of everything that you say. The 10% I do agree with you on is something I know I was very cautious of, or very aware of when I was watching it, particularly this time around, was the fact that the only person of color, she's a maid at the house. Nope. And I do have an issue with that. But the things you're kind of talking about, the fact, Neil, we touched on this the last time when we discussed, because we look at that, and I suppose from the Bible, you kind of bring like the likes of the test of Job kind of into this in a certain sense. But for me, that idea, it's the basic sense is that it's a reminder to give all the things you've kind of talked on there, but all the things that don't happen, is for me a reminder of the importance that one man can make within a community, and the one man that can make a difference. And you've kind of touched there about all the kind of negatives. I agree with you there's things I agree with you in part about Mary, but I also think that Mary Bailey is George Bailey's rock. I mean, I think she's such an understated and in many ways such an important part of the narrative. But that's me. Neil, feel free to kind of interject and kind of chat about kind of your rebuttal if you want, or anything you want to take up with about what Joanne said.
Yeah, it's not a rebuttal as such.
Go on, rebuttal.
No, but like I get what Joanne's saying, particularly around the female roles in it. Because there's two types of women in that film. There is Mary, who is the homemaker, and then there is Violet, who is like the town kind of floozy.
Oh, I love her.
And
she had my thumbs up, yeah. And she probably didn't have a lot of thumbs up, to be perfectly honest.
But she is portrayed that way. And I kind of was struck. I was kind of struck by that. Like, it's a very black and white, no pun intended, portrayal of women in that town. It's two sides of a coin. I totally understand what you're saying. I can see, as you're saying, the stuff about the Stockholm syndrome, what that looks like. Yes, I can see it. But to me, it's a similar thing to Jim. It shows what those moments do. It's not, to me, it's not a torture moment. It is it's a way of showing the value that a person has and the impact that a person can have. It's in some ways it's a very similar thing to Muppets Christmas Carol, to Scrooge, to that thing of, this is what happens if we stay, Christmas Carol, this is what happens if we stay on this path. This is where this path leads. So we have it's kind of like an inverted version that's like, we can change this now because you know how bad this can go. But It's a Wonderful Life goes, without you, this place goes really badly too. Potter takes over everything. And to me, it's more of a trying to instill the value of that individual rather than putting him through any kind of torture for his voicing of, it'd be better if I wasn't here.
Well, not just the individual, but also the community in a weird way, in the sense that it's a film that I know at the time it was released was seen as very pro-socialist and very pro-socialism. And you see that as clear as day. Like, you look at Potter now and you see the future former Presidente L. Donald Trump, and you see him. That's who I see now when I see Potter. This idea that everything is about money, everything is about kind of how can we squeeze as much out of everybody. And there's a line in it, and I was thinking about it, and I have written it down, but I don't have my notes. There's a line in it, and I thought really resonated with me with 2020 and the year that's been. I think it's when there's the run on the banks. And I think it's Potter's. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Potter makes the point about, well, I'm okay. I'm okay. There's not a problem for me. I can keep open. I can stay open. We can keep the banks. I can support this and I can do that. I'm not out of pocket. I will be okay in this. And I just was like kind of going, there we go. A film from 1946 speaks so strongly in 2020 with the year that has been, for some, not for everybody, about the haves and the have-nots. And then we have George Bailey, who stands for this need for, we need to be compassionate. We need to see the person, not just a property, not just what they stand for, not the money in their pocket. And that is why, that's another main reason why I love this film, is that message. I wouldn't say, I don't think it's Stockholm Syndrome, because I don't think that George Bailey the next day is going to suddenly kind of be going to church every day in any way and suddenly kind of being, that kind of way. I don't think he's a man of faith from the start. It's not as if he's kind of like bringing at me like an agnostic or someone who's an atheist, then agnostic, who's then kind of fallen head over heels with, Clarence and co. I wouldn't go so far as that, because I wouldn't say like Scrooge suffers from Stockholm Syndrome by the end of A Muppet's Christmas Carol. I don't know. Do you have the same issues with A Christmas Carol, Joanne?
I haven't seen that for years.
Yeah, but you know the story.
I know the story of Scrooge. Yeah, Scrooge is a very different sort of character. he's tortured because he's basically evil. To me, that's the difference, that he's put through these trials because he's evil. The difference for me, I think, would have been, see if this had been a time travel science fiction type movie.
Are you going to say you wish it was Doctor Who? Are you going to say
yeah, Doctor Who? But if it had been something that was sci-fi, as in the premise being that it was a time travel and time distortion, and that's the reason why George went through that, I think I would have enjoyed it more. I would have understood it more. It was the fact that this was allegedly God sending the angels down to save George. I found that really repulsive. That why couldn't have given it £8,000? To torture that man that way, I thought was really, I just didn't see it. It was wrong, because in the end, Potter doesn't give back the £8,000. Sure, he doesn't.
No,
I mean,
that's a big point. No. The big point is that it doesn't leave you. It doesn't leave you with a complete resolution. I mean, and that's all summed up, isn't it? Like, I don't know what you'd call it. It's not like the knob off the stair that keeps coming off every time George grabs it. That's at the end when everything is going right. That happens again, and it's this idea that the world is not perfect.
It's not. What happened was then this bear in mind, this is an angel, could have found the money, could have tied it up in a different way. It didn't have to go down the dark route that they did with him. Could have tied it up in a different way. The £8,000 could have been found. George could have been really happy. But the townsfolk, yes, it was great. They all came together and gave over their money. Even the person of colour, I thought I was going to get married, but here, have my money. Anyway, and everybody's laughing, go, as if a person of colour is ever going to get married in this town. Let's everybody laugh. But all those people then, yes, they sacrificed their money, while that rich penguin, he got away with that. I mean, so who was really the bad person in this?
Uncle Billy. I'm going to say that without even any hesitation. Uncle Billy. If I could get one person just kind of put away quite happily, it would be Uncle Billy. He's the one person in this film I kind of go, really, George? Really, George? I mean, just one person, just be like, definitely if you're going to have only 3 households over Christmas, I'd have Potter over before I'd have, Billy. He's going to bring his bird. And then when I forgot, when you see into the house, the amount of other animals he's got, you're like, oh no, you know what, Billy? You're not for me. It is the one person I would kind of go, remember what happened to you, George, with the pharmacist back when you were I think he does anyway, but I would just be like, give him a slap, George, because you know what?
Is that house on your street that whenever the ball went into the garden when you were a kid, you were like,
it's gone. It's gone.
Not the ball.
You wouldn't know what was in the garden to get you.
It's gone. I just don't know. Well, I don't know, maybe because God doesn't have £8,000. The Vatican might, but
I'll be more like it.
I don't know. I don't know if God, but I think that's kind of the whole idea of that, is that it doesn't give you, life's not easy, and it's not meant to be easy. Like, he doesn't come down and kind of go, there we go, mulligan. Never thought I'd bring up a golf reference in this. There, will give you a mulligan, George, and there's the £8,000. You're okay. I think that would completely devalue this film's message.
I think that there could have been other ways, definitely other ways to do things. If this is from a Christian point of view, well then, God is very thick and twisted, let's face it. I mean, we're talking about, you mentioned Job earlier. I mean, that whole thing was the adversary, because I don't think really Satan is mentioned as such by name at that point. Said, probably the only reason why Job follows you is because he's very rich and he has cattle and everything. God went, you fucking think so, do you bastard? Hang on a wee second here. Hold my pint. I'm going to go down and torture
Joanne,
this person.
I didn't know that God... I know that sometimes God was maybe a bit... looked a bit like Alanis Morissette, but I don't remember God being in like the knee breakers in Give My Head Peace or anything like that.
God's come down going, I'd do your fucking knees, wee lad, and took everything from Job. I mean, it's just... I think it's the whole, because it's packaged up that unless you're Christian, you can't be moralistic. You can't have morals. You can't have a community coming together unless they're full of Christians and everybody's praying for George. But actually, it's not the way it works. There is a podcast, sorry for dropping the name of another one. It's called, it's the Puzzle and a Thunderstorm range of podcasts. And they do a thing every year called Vulgarity for Charity, where they abuse people and people give them money for it. And they raise thousands every year. And there is that bias saying if you're agnostic or if you're an atheist or if you're a Satanist, you're not into charity work or you're not generous enough. you have to be a person of faith to actually to go that extra bit. You have to be in one of these faith cults, because that's what they are. Faith is a cult. There's no doubt about it. You give up your own self of identity, and half the time, apart from you, because you say you don't belong to one anymore, you're going in there and you're paying them loads of money every month. And that's why they were giving off like fuck there, because they couldn't go into churches because they couldn't hand their money out. So if you need a book, I'm going to go on a tangent here. If you need a book to set your morals, there's something wrong with you. You don't need a book to be moralistic. You don't need a book to be a good person.
But I don't think that's the whole point. I don't think George Bailey needs a book. George Bailey is just inherently nice.
He is a good person. And it's terrible that he could never live the life he should have had. What Old Clarence could have showed him actually was, here's the life that you would have had. And actually, it's just as well it went this other way, because you might have had a really bad accident, or you'd have been killed in one of these other places in the world, or you'd have fallen off one of the buildings you were going to do. It's actually, you're really lucky that you have this family. And okay, Mary admittedly probably has the worst original soundtrack to Buffalo Stance that I've ever heard. Nina Cherry certainly did it a lot better in the 80s. But because every time she sang that, I did my head in. That's all I could think about. But you should be grateful that you have this family, because so many people don't. But instead, they tortured him into being so desperate to get back to things the way they were again, that he was so happy to be back that he didn't mind going to jail again. And I could not wrap my head around this. As I say, if it had been more of a time travel thing, I'd have gone, okay, fair enough. But the fact that it's based around this bloody angel.
I'm struggling to remember the exact one, but I'm nearly certain that there's a Doctor Who Christmas special that borrows heavily from It's a Wonderful Life and uses something very similar, a similar element, and using the Doctor. So what you're saying is, Joanne, if it had been Doctor Who and done something similar, you would have none of those issues.
Probably not.
Well, here's a question for you then, right? Mm-hmm. Hypothetically, right? And then Neil, feel free to jump in. Had it been a science fiction episode and Doctor Who had showed up, whichever incarnation you want, which incarnation is it going to be, Joanne?
Well, but we'll do the Fourth Doctor for a change.
Okay. So Fourth Doctor shows up. Would you have the same issue if he did everything that happens in It's a Wonderful Life? Or would you want that Doctor to just go, hang on, in my back pocket here, there's $8,000. There you go, George. It's all right.
No, because the difference there is the Doctor always lies, and the Doctor isn't infallible. God is supposed to be infallible, and he made us, and we're totally fallible. It's not, or am I saying it the wrong way around? I can never remember. It doesn't make any sense to me. Trying to apply Christian logic to things, you're always going to hit this brick wall. It doesn't make any sense. People can be good without all this other bullshit around it.
But I don't think It's a Wonderful... Okay, the central element, I know we have an angel, and...
Yeah.
You know, I know that, but as much as it is a film that does dabble with Christianity, it keeps coming back to that thing. It is a film that has a positive view on society, the community, and the importance of the individual. And the individual is not a commodity. The individual is not someone who's nothing more than a consumer or anything like that. That is a person who's entitled to do what they want. And I know that then contradicts with George Bailey. I've talked about this idea of predestination, but would George have had the same impact on society, on his little town, if he hadn't moved away? What would have happened to it? Probably something similar. It would have descended into Pottersville.
Would it? This is the thing, would it? Somebody else might have moved in. There could have been. You could go into the multi-universes aspect of things here. Something else could have happened. It doesn't necessarily. That could have been mad, made-up bullshit by Clarence. Let's face it, we only have this. I mean, he's a second-class angel as well. He doesn't even have his wings.
So possibly, I'm sorry, Joanne. Possibly one of the nicest people ever in cinematic history, Clarence, who just anytime I see him on screen, I want to smile. You're just saying he's not all that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I thought to myself, he could have been making all this bullshit up. Bear in mind, he's a magical being that is not within the natural laws of anything. He could make all sorts of shit up. And he'd go, oh yeah, see, look at that. that's the way that would have happened. Not that this other person would have come in. Potter could have had a bang in the head. He could have died early. Could have had some other relative come in that took over the bank and was actually a really good person. There was an awful lot of variables there. Everything was falling on George. And you're right, one man can make a difference. Absolutely no doubt about it. And it is up to people to do the best that they can and to support other people. I totally agree with that. I totally agree about the sense of community and people being there for each other. That's not really where I get my issue from. The issue for me is watching the systematic torture of a man through a film. And that's what really, based on some sort of higher purpose being thing. And I find it, I was affronted by it. I was upset by it. I felt so sorry for George. I really did. And I felt so sorry for every single woman within this movie, because you're either getting fucked or you're being fucked.
What you're basically accusing God Almighty of is fake news, right?
Clarence, yes. Well, he is fake news.
Fake
news. Goodness, read the Bible and you can see the amount of fake news coming out of Egypt and all, and the Ark, and oh my goodness,
true of every animal.
Well, you see, one of the other contradiction is it was only the unclean animals that were allowed in, and there were 7 of each.
Okay, it's all right, Neil. I don't really know where to go. I don't know if you want to kind of interject or anything you kind of think on that. Just want to share your thoughts on Joanne's kind of what she's been saying there.
This idea that we're talking about fake news. This idea that Christians are better people is fake news. I would say that in my life, I have encountered people who profess Christianity and are incredibly tight and ungenerous with their time and not willing to be charitable and very self-interested and egotistical. And I have met people who have zero faith who would give you the shirt off their back. Which to me is more Christian than those other people that I have encountered. There's good people and bad people in every walk of life, I think. Sadly, the money thing, this the kind of the magic bag, the lucky bag of $8,000. I don't think money is the issue. I think what the film is trying to do is, yes, you could just do that. You could just go, boom, there you go. There's $8,000 and just take it and put it in the bank and sort it all out. But I think the film is actually more, has more of a human element to it than it even does the religious to me. So when I put it on the other day, you know when you watch something and you remember it differently to how it actually is. So I thought this film opens and we start with Clarence and God and their conversation at the start up in heaven and go and fetch me Clarence, Joseph. But it doesn't start like that. It starts with the prayers of a community. It starts with the human community and it ends with the human community. And I think those bookends are very important because that's what holds everything in the film together. Yes, God is invoked. Yes, there is an angel. But I don't think of it as any kind of explicitly religious film. I even thought to myself when I was watching it, I was like, yes, they're praying. But I know people who would claim to have no belief when they see somebody in difficulty like that would say to you that they just kind of randomly fired a prayer up in blind hope or whatever. And I don't know if that entire community is. They may well be, they may all well be devout churchgoers every Sunday. But to me, it was more just that kind of snapshot prayer of there's somebody in trouble. This is at least something we can do that. And then the final coming together at the end. I find it more, the more I watch it, the more humanist of a film, I think it is. And I know there is God and angels, and I understand that. And one of the problems with Christianity is as soon as you invoke God or angels or anything like that, they go, well, that's ours now. And it's like,
yes, that's true.
no, we can't stick a flag in this and claim it as our own. This film is not, to me, an explicitly Christian film. This isn't used as some kind of mass device to convert people to Christianity, which a lot of quote unquote Christian films, your God's Not Dead and all those absolute cesspit films.
Oh, they're awful. Really, really bad. Terrible.
Awful films. I don't know. I can't work out who they're for, what good to do, any of that. That's not what This Is a Wonderful Life is. And I think one of the problems within Christianity is our need to stop just kind of going, well, you've said God, so we'll take that and we'll turn it, like we'll just flip it into something that we can manipulate into our own device. It's a Wonderful Life is a very humanist film. It's a very socialist film. That's not going to please a lot of people in a lot of very conservative church pews. And I really feel like you could just, a magic bag of $8,000 could appear, but this film is a film that tells you that money is not the answer. Because if it was, that thing on the end of the banister wouldn't come off in his hand. Do you know,
And it also wouldn't be, the message wouldn't be he who has friends is not a failure. It would be he who has $8,000 is going to be okay. Frank Capra made this in the wake of the Second World War, 1946. He wanted something to be a reminder of the inherent goodness of people and the inherent goodness of humanity after seeing what, the world had done to itself during the Second World War. And that's what I take it. But I'm not a Christian by any means, but I have no issues. But I don't have an issue with the fact there's an angel. I don't have a fact that there's God is evoked. I don't have any issues. That's possibly I'd be interested to see, Joanne, what you think of something like A Matter of Life and Death, which is similar-ish, but doesn't, from memory, it's been maybe about 6 months since I've watched it, doesn't evoke those religious terms as openly as they do here. I love A Matter of Life and Death, and I love this film too. And I know last year for the TV show, I know we reviewed, isn't it, the Preacher's Wife, which is similar-ish kind of vibes to It's a Wonderful Life, and I don't like that film at all. It's got Gregory Peck in it, and I'm not a fan. There must be something kind of wrong there. But what I love about It's a Wonderful Life, and what it never fails to do, is put a smile on my face. And I know I'm repeating myself, and I'm repeating myself ad nauseum, is the fact that there's positivity out there, there's people, there's kindness out there in the community, and sometimes we don't see it, and maybe in our darkest days we don't see it, but it's there. And I think this film reminds you that it's there. It's just holding up a light to that, which is not a bad thing. I don't have an issue. There's things you've touched on tonight. Yes, we have to look at in terms of the context. When it was released, unfortunately, the one black character in this film has the role of a servant. I don't think you would make a film like that now. I do think that Mary Bailey, yes, there's things about what you're saying, and I agree with you, and the kind of portrayal of women, but I think Mary Bailey is such a strong character. She's George Bailey's rock. George doesn't want to even ask her out. It's not that he doesn't want to be with her. He's just this nice guy who thinks one of his friends happens to like Mary Bailey, even though it's clear as day. You'd have to hit that record of hers in the face to see that, I'm going to go full Northern Irish. She wants to see him. She wants him to see her. She fancies the pants off him. And I have no problems with the fact that at the start of this film, Jimmy Stewart's meant to be playing a 16, 17-year-old. It's never an issue. Not to evoke The Mandalorian. I was talking about this on our Christmas TV guide. I would have had no bother with if someone had showed up and he wasn't digitally de-aged at all. That's as much as I'm going to say without going into spoilers for The Mandalorian. I have no issues with the fact that Jimmy Stewart plays that character from his youth to the middle age when he sees that. I don't know. Maybe you can answer this better than anyone. Do you think this film has really been claimed by Christians? Because I don't know. I just see it as a piece of cinema. My own church, the Church of Cinema, I just adore it because it's a film that wears its heart on its sleeve unashamedly and tries to put a smile on your face. And for me, okay, there's a few tears running down my cheeks, but it succeeds year on year on.
No, I don't think it has been claimed.
Are you going to claim it now, Neil?
No.
Get your flag.
Put a flag in it. I think there's always a danger with anything related to Christianity, where as soon as like any musician claims any kind of faith, they're like, oh, they're ours now. It's like, I think it's a very kind of, we can grab it and try and keep it to ourselves. And I think one of the reasons that It's a Wonderful Life has kind of escaped that is probably because of that socialist aspect to it, because that doesn't sit well in a lot of church spaces. It does in certain spaces, but not in the majority. And I think that those films that come out where the goal is conversion, to be used as some kind of propaganda machine to kind of lull you into some kind of faith through whatever emotional manipulation they choose to use in those things.
It's not the Passion of the Christ, is what you're saying, on films like that.
No, and it's not The Shack, and it's not God's Not Dead 2. It's not flipping Left Behind, which is some...
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's not anything with Kevin Sorbo in it. You know, Kevin Sorbo's really let himself down since Hercules. Oh, he's such a fruitcake.
But you know what, though? I mean, I know we're going off on... Well, typical me here, going off on a bit of a tangent. Films that talk about Christianity and faith and have them within some of the central narrative, I actually quite like them. I'm thinking again of Dogma. Dogma is written by someone in Kevin Smith who knows his Bible inside out. Okay, I'm going to sound flippant when I say it, but even Monty Python, The Life of Brian, again, I know they kind of send up kind of those people, and not everyone, as I was very quickly clarified when I was talking about this in Radio Ulster with Ralph McLean. Not everybody does that who has faith, but those who blindly follow word for word what is said, you know, those are films that they're two very different kind of films to bring in a context. And I'm not comparing them in any way to It's a Wonderful Life, but those are films that interest me. And there's other films where I've talked about this before. Okay, I don't love the film that much. I don't hate it as much as others, but a film like Alien Covenant, which has at its one of its central characters kind of talking about someone who is a man of faith, a man of Christianity, and how that causes problems for the people around him. I mean, again, people might say I'm kind of digging very heavily to try and find some kind of something of worth within Alien Covenant, but those are things that interest me. I don't really think at any point we see George Bailey. He's not having that kind. I don't think he has that kind of that quintessential I am a kind of Christian, thank you God moment. But I think what he does have is a reminder of his importance of his self. And I think that thing that they keep talking about throughout the film, like that life is precious. I think that's what he's reminded of, not more that God's not a bad one.
Well, Satanism is all about the self. Hail thyself is thy master, rather than giving yourself over to an entity that you can't see and that you can't rely on. It's personal responsibility. And that is what Satanism is about. It's about personal responsibility. You are your own temple, as it were. But just on a quick aside, did you notice that George can't kiss? He sucks the face of Mary Bailey on every occasion. And it's really quite disturbing. Sorry, talking about disturbing things. This was really disturbing to watch. Not only was her rendition of Nina Cherry's Buffalo Stance, and I'm sorry, I still think that was a great joke, really, really bad. George also couldn't kiss, and he just sucked the face and the nose and the chin, whatever it was, right of Mary. And it was just, I've got, because we've all had kissers like that, and you think, dear goodness, you're never going to be able to find my clit if you can't find my mouth. I'm sorry, just to put it as blunt as that. So we've all been there as women. We know what these ones are like.
Well, welcome Neil to podcasting with Joanne.
The bit that made me laugh actually was whenever George and Mary are downstairs, because she lures him in with her siren song, their Buffalo Stance song, and he comes into the house and her mum shouts down. Her mum's in her dressing gown, because, you know, obviously mums can't leave the house. And it's what are you doing down there? And Mary shouts out that George is making mad, passionate love to her. And the mum goes, oh, flip, well, I better not go downstairs. Anybody else would be down the stairs going, get your fucking hands off my daughter, you slimy old bastard, you. But no, she's like,
what are you meant to be, 21? I don't think so, Jimmy Stewart. Get out.
Get your hands off my daughter. You'll never be able to find anything anyway. We've seen how you kiss. You're shit in bed. Go fuck yourself.
But
that's why she's trying to encourage him to take up with plastics, man.
Hey, all I can say is I learned how to kiss from watching Jimmy Stewart, and It's a Wonderful Life.
Oh no, he sucks her chin and everything. It's like obviously nobody can see the facial expressions I'm doing here, but you know, it's.
I think that's a Jimmy Stewart issue. If you look at
because the mouth goes everywhere when he talks. So right enough, it's bound to. I mean, you think a man would have skills with a mouth that goes all over the place, but no, apparently not. So yes, the sense of community is great. I have to agree there. Yes, a person is worth more. Yes, that's absolutely fantastic. But I'm not really into torture porn, which I find this almost to be. This was sort of like the 1946 version of Saw.
Stick that on the poster. I think no matter what happens, I've already watched it this year. I'm tempted to watch it again on Christmas Eve. And I'm just, Joanne, just by any complete chance, just the reason why you hated this film, did you watch the colored version, not the black and white?
No, I watched the black and white version.
That's okay, because I seen a mutual friend of yours and I was watching the colored version, and I felt the need but resisted to kind of go on a massive rant about why would you ever watch the colored version. It's terrible. I just wanted to ask that. I don't think we're going to change your opinion on the film. I get a sense that this time next year, 2021, when things are much more positive, hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll not be throwing on It's a Wonderful Life at Christmas.
No, I'm more inclined to throw on Batman Returns at Christmas and Die Hard.
That's right.
Those are my Christmas movies.
Two good choices. Could have been worse. Could have put on The Christmas with the Cranks, or you could have even said something like Trading Places, or even something like that. But no, that's two good choices.
Actually, my Christmas movie a couple of years ago was Aliens.
Okay.
I loved it. I hadn't seen it for ages. It was a director's cut, and I thought, I'm going to watch this. And it was the best Christmas morning I had in ages. Sitting watching Aliens and shouting at the screen, kill it, kill it, kill it.
Neil, I don't really know. Have you got round? I think you said you have watched. Have you got round to watching it? You have, didn't you? Because you've said it a couple of times on this pod. Yeah, you've watched it already.
Yeah, I've had a go ahead of this, and I might, if I get the house to myself at any point. Well, probably not now, given how things are. But might throw it on again if I can. But
just tell them you might need to, just need to self-isolate for, an hour. Just 2 hours or so should do me. 2 hours would do me.
It's about Muppets Christmas Carol is to come on Christmas Eve. That's our kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. See if you're like me, and just it comes that line delivered by Kermit. And I know that line's coming, and it never, just in relation to what we said earlier on, that line has never, it's always got me in the fields, but it has never got me. And watch it in the cinema, and that line, my God, again, it was that look. I mean, listen to previous podcasts talking about crying at Wonder Woman 1984. My lovely wife sitting in the cinema beside me, kind of looking over going, really? Really? It's like, what can I say? I have a big heart. That's all I can say.
I'm just thinking, if I do put it on, it's only towards the end, the bit where there's a lot of people in somebody's house. Just for the novelty factor, I'd probably freeze it on that. To see what it's like to have more than one person in your house.
Joanne, does not even the Merry Christmas movie house, Merry Christmas other places, I can't quite know, does none of that even get you in the fields at all?
No, because I don't really like Christmas either, so that doesn't, I just think, Christmas bores the tits of me, it really does. I just find it really annoying, and I think it's terrible pressure on people to spend lots of money that they don't have. I see it, I think Christmas is quite a sad, commercialized thing. I think it should just be you with your loved ones and food. All this present buying, I think, is just unreasonable. I think it's bad. We're teaching kids that they have to be good to get items, and parents are stressed out trying to get. I mean, there was the PlayStation 5 recently, all that debacle, and what are we teaching kids? That gifts and presents and things are just that. That's what you should aim for in life.
Yeah, but you'd love a PlayStation 5 though, Joanne.
Well,
You know,
I've still
I agree with Joanne. I agree with everything you're saying. I've always said this. I think as children, we are brought up to believe that Christmas is much bigger than what it is. Not that much bigger, but it is this massive thing that on the 25th and onwards, you know, well, everything's going to change. Well, that's a big thing again with It's a Wonderful Life. I always find it weird that they're singing Old Lang Syne on Christmas night, on Christmas Eve. But again, it's all about kind of new beginnings and the positivity of going forward. So I give that. But yeah, I agree with you. But you know, if my lovely wife has got me a PlayStation 5, I'll not complain. I don't think she has, though. She really has not. No, she'll probably get me like a PlayStation 2. Be like, there you go.
You'll just get a good suck in the chin, Jim. You'd like a good suck at Christmas, wouldn't you? No man would pass a good suck at Christmas.
Only if it was Jimmy Stewart. Only if it was Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, yeah, give me a suck on the chin, Jim.
So I really don't think, no matter how much I try, and Neil hasn't been anywhere near aggressive enough in this. Neil needs to be much more proactive. Neil's been like, yeah, I agree with everything you said. Actually, you know what? You're right. Yeah, actually, what's the number for your local Satanist kind of division? I'm not disappointed. No, I think it's just lovely. And I fully expected that from Mr. Neil Sedgewick. So look, that's us out of time. We're not going to convince Joanne, but Neil, you and I both still love It's a Wonderful Life and would thoroughly recommend it.
Yeah, Bedford Falls forever.
We can't all watch Aliens on Christmas Day.
Although now I really want to.
Yeah, it's good. The director's cut is fucking awesome.
So that's a wrap on another one of our Christmas specials. Thanks very much to Neil and thanks to Joanne for giving up their time to talk about the movie. Thank you for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you haven't already listened to our Crime Scene to Scene Christmas special hosted by Joe McElroy and Therese Ray, I'd definitely recommend seeking it out. And you've also got our Christmas TV listings guide to look forward to as well. Be sure to subscribe to make sure you never miss a single episode, and you can find our complete back catalogue of previous episodes of the podcast on our website at www.banderflix.com. I've been your host, Jim McLean, the editor-in-chief of the Banderflix Movie Review website, and we'll be back pretty soon with another episode of We Need to Talk About Movies.
This has been We Need to Talk About Movies. Thanks for listening. For more information, visit banterflix.com. See you next time.